hello, people of London. I'm the guy who's under pressure to be funny. So, thanks for getting that out of the way. Cheers, nice. So we're talking about things from the heart. I love the fact that we've come together on the basis of love. I think that's pretty cool, isn't it? Right. That feels pretty good, doesn't it? The other thing I love is jokes. I love jokes. My first joke book was given to me by my grandmother when I was just 12, and it was brilliant. It was amazing. It was very surreal. Lots of stories, lots of one-liners. Very, very funny. And you should check it out. It's very old school, but it's still in print. It's called The Bible. So go and have a look for that. That talking snake is hilarious. Now, okay. So what did I just do? Let's have a look at it. What did I just do? That joke, right? It's obviously a joke. It's called a reveal. In my industry, it's called a reveal, and the way that it works is that you are trying to collectively move the audience's consciousness towards a definitive point whereby you reveal a specific piece of information which creates laughter, right? That's how a joke works. So, like a joke is this almost this miniature revelation of an audience, right? Whereby everyone comes to the same conclusion or sees the same thing at the same time. It's like a mental magic trick in many ways. So that's what you do and that's why they call it a punch line, right? A punch line. And the most effective punch lines are the ones you can remove right down to a single word. And if you look into that joke, that's pretty much what I did. Is I went the Bible, and it's just on even the doesn't reveal it. It's only the word Bible that suddenly, that entire sentence, those series of sentences suddenly mean everything, and it all clicks together, and then we all laugh. Have you ever thought, what is laughter? I mean, what is laughter? We're just these odd freaking monkeys that don't fit in, right? We're these massive brains that walk around, like blessed and cursed, with this massive brain that wanders around. And yet, this bonding thing that we have is laughter. What is that? A friend of mine once said that laughter is like a sneeze of joy. I thought, that's an interesting concept, isn't it? A sneeze of joy, right? And I said, well, why do you classify it like that? And he said, well, with a sneeze, you can't see it coming, you can't avoid it once it starts, and when you're in it, you're totally immersed in it, and then it happens, and then all of a sudden you have to apologise on the back end of it. So, it's just like laughter, isn't it? Isn't laughter an interesting thing, right? The best description of laughter I've ever had is that laughter is an irrefutable, undeniable, spontaneous explosion of truth. Ooh, what an interesting description, right? I think that's quite powerful, right? Because if you look at what happens with humour, is there is a realisation. It's like a miniature revelation, like I was saying before. Taking it out of the religious context, the seven-headed dragon and the ocean of blood. Remove it from that, right? Just to the notion that it is a singular moment of realization within a consciousness. So when you just suddenly go and everything just becomes clear. I'll give you another example, because humor often reframes things. So here's a joke. I'll do a joke. Now it's going to be a bit weird, because I'm just going to suddenly go, here's a bit of my routine, and then try and perform a piece of comedy as if I haven't told you there's a piece of comedy coming up. So it's going to be a little bit strange. Here's one of the opening jokes that I currently use. Now have a look at how this reframes things. Right, so I was on the tube, this woman came up to me with a little baby in her arms. Right, little baby, genuine infant on the tube going, money for my baby, money for my baby. And I was the only one in the tube, so, pressure. And so I took out a tenner and she was like, money for my baby. I was like, baby first, and then you get the baby. What does that do? What does that joke do? That joke completely reframes the status. Do you understand? Right? So we go from charity to selfishness, right? All of a sudden we go from someone trying to help to someone trying to help themselves. So what that joke has done is created a complete juxtaposition. It's a complete paradox. And that's what a lot of humour makes use of. Paradox is one of the key angles that as a comic you start to view a premise. So you basically create a premise, which is the initial idea, the potential for funny, and then you start finding all these different angles. For example, if a lot of it has to do with swapping positions on things. For example, someone who's poor pretending to be rich can be funny. Someone who's rich pretending to be poor can be funny. Someone who's really, really sad yet trying to come across as happy can be really, really funny. Likewise, someone who's really happy but trying to cry can be really funny. Juxtaposition is a huge tool within comedy, right? Creating those paradoxes. Because within comedy, right, if you peel back all the layers of comedy, you know what you find when you get to the middle? When you get to the core, if you scratch away all the paint, Do you know what's actually in the core of comedy? Tragedy. Tragedy is at the secret of comedy. Success, I don't know if you've noticed, is just not funny. You notice that? You're never get a comedian that comes on stage and goes, yeah, so I just made more money this year than I've ever made in my life. Recently married a model, and yeah, we've got 2 gorgeous children. Exactly. There you go, right? So you will not find success will be funny. It's just not funny. If you look at any model of comedy, even models where people present an outer image of success, the humor is in the tragedy, or what I like to call the humanity. We heard earlier in these talks about vulnerability. Well, at the core of comedy is intense levels of vulnerability, like ridiculous levels of vulnerability. I'll give you another example. Here's a joke that I do when one of my starting jokes as well. I go, well, yeah, so I think I'm losing weight, which is great. It's great. I'm losing weight. Thanks, dude. Yeah. It's thanks to a new trendy crash diet, which is sweeping London at the moment, called poverty, which is, who would have thought the best way to lose the pounds is by not having any pounds. Now, what that's doing is you're making use of vulnerability. You're taking status and you're taking a lower status, instantly a lower status. And that is the traditional place of the fool, right? Is the lower status individual. It's never the higher status individual. With things like celebrity, we've seen that change, in which the rock and roll status of comedy now it's never been like that before. That's a new level. It originally surfaced like that in the 80s, but now you've got 2 groups of people filling stadiums with spoken word. One is comedians and the other is right-wing Christian fundamentalist preachers. What does that say, right? What does that say about our society? Isn't that interesting that's the spoken word that we seem to be listening to? I mean, arguably what's happening with TED now is that we've got this new coliseum, this new stadium that is the internet. So now we can have these ideas shared in very small spaces, and they can be expanded into the vast area of the web, which is brilliant. A bit of my history in terms of being a comedian. I come from a very small town and a very small village a very small village in a very small country on a very tiny planet. And yeah, I got into stand-up. I come from New Zealand. That's where the accent's from, if you're wondering. Some people will say Australian. I'm like, fair enough. Yeah, there's not a big difference to the British over here. You both came from the same side of the world. End up on the same side of the bar. It's a long way to come to pull a pint, but there is a difference. I can clear it up. Australia beat us in the swimming, and Australia beat us in the cycling. We beat Australia in the treatment of Indigenous people. So it's all about your priorities, really. They have the Institute of Sport. We've got a history we can remember. So nice to be given that. Yeah, but I came from a tiny town called Paikakariki. I got into comedy. I completely fell into comedy. I was an acting junkie as a kid, and sometimes destiny takes hold and directs you in places that you didn't expect you were going to go. I got shoved from an improv class into a bizarre thing called stand-up. It's part of a drama school, an 8-day drama school for 14 to 19-year-olds. They pushed me there because I was in improv last year. I was like a drama junkie. I wanted to be an actor. And they were like, no, Crellin, you did this last year. You can't be in this class. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do the course then. They're like, no, you're in this class called stand-up. And I'm like, what? What is that? And they were like, no, we don't know. Some comedy writing thing. This was the only 1 year within this drama school that they ever taught stand-up. And the teacher had only learned about stand-up because he was part of a sketch group that had been commissioned to write a sitcom, right? And these American writers had come over, and there was just these new Kiwi guys who had never created a sitcom before, just sitting there like this. These 2 American writers were like, yeah, well, if you want to get good at writing jokes, or gags, as we call them in the industry, gags, what you want to do is as much stand-up as you can. And just these Kiwi guys went, do what? And they're like, you want to do more stand-up. What is that exactly? And so they showed these guys these tapes, and so stand-up actually came to New Zealand. Stand-up was not known in my country. And so I did this course for 8 days, right? And I ended up writing 7 minutes of comedy, which is ridiculous, in a week. And I didn't know how much you were supposed to or be able to write, and so I just spent the whole week writing this stuff. And then I went and performed, and I performed to about 500 people in a massive theatre at the end of 8 days. So 8 days to write 7 minutes of comedy, and then perform it. And it just went so well that my teacher came up to me afterwards, and this is me at the age of like 18, and he gave me a card and went, how about you come up to Auckland and do this, because you're quite good at this. And I took the card and I went and sat in this theatre, this massive 3-tier theatre, the Hastings Municipal Theatre. It's not really that massive. I've been to the O2. It's not massive. But I was sitting in like the 3rd tier of this theatre, and I'm by myself, and I've got this little card, and I'm this drama student, and there's like 200 kids at the end of the drama school, and there was this tech guy standing right down by the stage, and he was the teacher of the tech course, and he was rolling up this cable. And I was sitting there right up in the gods looking down, just holding this card that I'd just been given, just shaking with excitement. And right at that moment, I'll never forget, he just stopped rolling up the cable, and he'd been looking down the whole time. He stopped rolling up the cable like that and looked straight up at me and went, yeah, you're pretty funny, bro. And then just went back to rolling up the cable like I just remember that, holding that card and just having that. And sometimes that's all you need as a kid, to just push you in this direction, right? There's one moment you're like, right, I'm going to do this now. And it's not been an easy journey at all. Like, I'm really into Joseph Campbell's, the idea of the monomyth, the hero, right? And I've really tried to cast myself as the hero in my life, because it's either that or the villain, right? So I'm going to cast myself as a hero. Have you ever asked yourself, are you the main character in your life? Have you ever asked that question? Because I don't know about you, but there are a lot of moments in my life where I'm like, I am the 3rd spear holder to the left in my own life. Like, how was your life, Benjamin? Good. I held a spear for a bit. Gladiator, it's a great movie. Oh, I saw you. You were in that for a second, weren't you? You were in that movie, but you were good with a spear. You were good. So I tried to take hold of being the hero, but what I was actually following was the path of the fool, or the jester. Now, if you're looking into the tarot, which is this weird, iconic oracle of ancient times, the very first symbol of the tarot, they have this thing called the arcana, which are all these different characters. They're almost like the heroes of the day. And there's this weird card called the Fool. And it's not established whether the Fool is the beginning or the end of the tarot, because the symbol of the Fool, the number that the card is given, is 0. It's like it's seen as the beginning. And the image of the Fool is this dude with this bundle over his head, bundle over his back, all his worldly possessions, which is virtually nothing, which is right in line with my life, right, holding it over his head, holding it over like this, and he's stepping off a cliff like that. And there's a dog that's barking, and he's stepping off a cliff like that, and he's looking upwards like that. Now, what that actually means is that, because I became fascinated with the symbol, is what he's actually doing is he's supposedly looking to the divine, or the universe, as we like to call it nowadays, with self-help literature and so on. We've left religion behind. What, do we call it God? No, it's the universe now. I'm pretty sure God was the universe. Yes, but it's the universe now. So it just makes people feel better about things. So yeah, he's pretty much looking up and witnessing the divine. So he is distracted from the world by a higher calling. That's the idea of the Fool. And he's potentially going to step off a cliff, but we never see him step off a cliff. Now, relating that back to my life, that was pretty much what brought me here. I finished a tour of Canada, where I'd done a 50-day tour of Canada. I borrowed money, and I registered in this big theatre tour, and I finished this tour of Canada, and I had like 4-star and 4.5-star reviews, and I'd made all this money, which I then invested in registering for the tour next year as a part of a lottery. You put your money into it, and if the lottery comes up, wow, you're registered for like 8 cities for another like 40, 50-day tour. Brilliant, right. Then I had a ticket back to New Zealand, and I knew that I was as sharp as I could possibly be as a comic. So instead of taking that ticket, I spent the last of my money to go here. And I came to London with £50 and no work, no gigs, and no one that knew I was here. Right, like fully into the blue. What happened was a friend of mine put me up on the. I arrived in London, and I had 3 phone numbers, and only 2 of them worked. Sorry, one of them worked. The other one was switched off. So one of them worked, and it was the phone number of a guy called Rhys Darby, who's a New Zealand comic, right? And I literally called him up, and I went, Rhys, I'm coming to London. He went, oh yeah, that's great. When are you coming? And I went, I'm at the airport. And he said, well, where are you staying? And I went, I'm not sure. And he went, guess you're on my floor then, right? And so I turned up at his place and he managed to get me a gig, and I finished the weekend being able to earn £300 in a weekend. And all of a sudden my existence as a comic had gone completely global. And all of a sudden I was here. Now you've got to understand, coming from New Zealand to London is like leaving the Shire, right? And ending up in Mordor, right? This is like the darkest, scariest, freaking most full-on city of the world. But people don't understand that's why the comedy is so good. Why is the stand-up scene so good in London? Because it's a shithole that crushes people, right? But also allows for freedom of speech. Well, brilliant, right? Let's not let go of that, right? Freedom of speech. But what is that, right? What is freedom of speech? And do you really witness it from your comedians? Do you really witness freedom of speech from comics? Because I'll tell you, man, there was a comic that changed things for me, completely changed the game. And the comic his name was Bill Hicks. And he changed everything, man. I witnessed him when I was about 20 as a comic. I've been doing stand-up for a couple of years. I was given these CDs of Bill Hicks, and it changed everything. I was given these 4 CDs that were actually put out by his management. This is before they were released in New Zealand. And then I was handed them by a producer who said, I think you need to listen to these. There's no rush in getting them back. And I listened to those, and it completely changed comedy. Like, for all of a sudden, it wasn't about being funny. It was about, what are you going to be funny about? So all of a sudden, comedy became the tool, and the challenge as the artist became, what are you going to focus on? In my comedy, I genuinely try and use comedy to deal with things that I find really challenging in our society. Because I try and act like an alchemist with my comedy, in that I take that which really upsets me, that makes me feel really angry, but also things that make me feel vulnerable, and I try and use humor to transmute those. So transmute that energy into laughter, because laughter makes things accessible for all of us. Laughter is one of the most powerful ways by which humans can interact with each other. It's so instantaneous. And if you experience it in a room, it's like a democracy of joy, right? That explosion of laughter is like that's like a democratic reaction. It's like, we all get it. And when you start using that towards other really intense topics, you've got yourself an extremely powerful medium. And it's one that we've not quite seen the benefit of yet, but I really hope we do in the future. Some of the topics that my humor addresses is things like, I talk about how Obama isn't black. He's mixed race. If you bought a marker pen labeled black from an art supply store, took it home, wrote your name with it, and it came out the colour of Obama, you would take that pen back, wouldn't you? That's like the beginning of a routine about mixed race. Why is Tiger Woods constantly referenced by our media as black? I've got routines about how the Queen is German. You try and explain that to your average British member, they freak the flip out, right? It's really hard for them. I've got things that paint circumcision as a form of paedophilia. It's child abuse. It's like it's genital mutilation. But you try and explain that to anyone who's even vaguely religious, Jewish, or also forms of Christian or Muslim, Jewish and Muslim who both have circumcision. They just flip out. I try and mirror Iraq. I've got a gag where I go, here, I remember 9/11. We watched that in New Zealand's, we watched that in New Zealand on Britain's BBC and America's CNN and Palestine's funniest home videos. Sometimes humor is really, really important, that it makes things accessible that we don't talk about and that we don't discuss. So the people with the most powerful senses of humor that I've ever encountered have always worked in very, very intense environments that actually demands humor for their survival. The best humor I've ever encountered has been from soldiers, from doctors, from psychiatric workers, from therapists. Therapists normally have an amazing sense of humor. They need it. It's essential for their job. They have to be able to engage these things, and they have to also help often their clients find the light in things. I mean, that's the language of humor. To be light-hearted. To find the light side of something. Sorry, that's not the right phrasing. To be light-hearted. There were like 3 I was going to use. To make light of something. These are references that we use. The symbol for us to have an idea is a light going on. We talk about being enlightened. Humor has always been associated with a higher view of being able to see something. Even if it's bawdy. It's the wits. People talk about people having a rapier wit or a sharp wit. It's always been associated with intelligence, to be able to try and find a humorous perspective on things. I'll tell you one of the most impressive pieces of humour that I encountered was actually from my brother. And it was at the death of my younger brother. So when I was 23, my brother, who was 17, he got hit by a truck and killed. And I had to return home, and it had changed. It put my career on hold for a long time. There was a lot of grieving. But he was really not very damaged at all. He was swept under the wheels of a massive orchard truck, and his cycle helmet shattered into over 100 pieces. And but his body was almost completely undamaged. It was bizarre. He had a scrape here. He had a scrape on his leg, and there's a little bit of abrasion on one of his arms, and that was it. And so me and my brother Leon were in the morgue, and we'd come in. My brother Oliver was so distraught, and fair enough, Rupert was his closest friend, and he was only 14, and he couldn't handle going and witnessing Rupert, which is fair enough. Rupert was the name of my brother. And so me and my brother Leon went in, and we had the job of the guys in the morgue gave us the job of dressing our brother in preparation for the cremation, right? So we went in, and there's the body of your brother there, and then so we stripped the body naked, and then we put on his favourite sneakers and his favourite like pants, and the t-shirt of his favourite band. And I still remember as I was propping this body up, and bodies are dead, by the way. When people are dead, they are like dead, really dead. And so I had my brother between me, and my brother Leon was there. And as we pulled on his t-shirt, my brother Leon, I said to my brother Leon, shall we put 2 coins in his pocket for the boatman? And Leon, without skipping a beat, went, to be fair, bro, with his student ID, we probably only need 1. Biggest laugh of the talk, right? Interesting, isn't it? That at the center of comedy is tragedy. So I really hope you've learned something. It's been a pleasure presenting that to you. Thanks a lot. See you.